All right, Jim Szoke joins us today on Pirate Radio Live to talk some Pirates and some Panthers. Jim, we appreciate your time. How you doing?
Clip, good. Doing well. Hope you're doing well.
Yes, sir. Doing well. First of all, we kind of trade war stories around here of the teams we root for, and it wasn't a great year to be a Pirates and Commanders fan. Probably even worse if you were a Panthers and Pirates fan when it comes to struggling offenses. I do think that our buddy Patrick Mason from the Daily Reflector takes the cake. He covers ECU football. He's an alum from Iowa, so we got to watch that offense. Also a Bears fan, and we'll throw in he's a diehard White Sox fan. So tough year. We'll give Patrick Mason the award for toughest year to be a sports fan. But Jim, had to be rough for you calling ECU games and also Panthers games. But the great thing about sports, you can turn it around in 1 year, and I know you're hopeful that the Panthers, but certainly the Pirates with their offensive overhaul can look a lot different than they did a year ago.
No, no doubt. And, at the core, we're all fans, right? So whether you're working the games or participating in the games, coaching the games, broadcasting the games, I mean, it really is, it's fun to win. And when it's not winning and it's not much offense to talk about, that just, makes it doubly bad, no doubt about it. So, yeah, definitely we've earned our stripes over the past year of fandom. So we're going to appreciate this year, as you said, whatever it is going to be better on both accounts, I think. But to your point, I think with the Pirates especially, they've done so much to address the offense, beginning with John David Baker, then obviously the transfer portal, the quality of players that are back and healthy that'll be part of what's moving forward. That I think there's a lot of optimism that the defense will be as good as it was last year, and then that the offense will hold up its end of the bargain. And for the Panthers, just real quick on them, I think it's a process. I think kind of similarly, the defense is good, but it seems to be a little bit slower as far as how they're going to go about taking their time, maybe developing around Bryce Young, and that it can't be done in one season. But I'm really optimistic about the Pirates in particular this year.
Interesting that it's kind of the opposite of how it used to work out, right, Jim? You could really flip things around quick in the NFL. It's designed for the teams that were bad 1 year to be better the next. Now it's college football where you can do those overhauls overnight. But how about East Carolina specifically? They announced Jake Garcia is going to be the starting quarterback. Your thoughts on that, Jim? I was a little surprised just because Caden Hauser came in first, and we kind of thought he was going to get that shot to be the starter. But I think it says a lot about Jake Garcia that he was able to come in and win that job. Sounded like a very close job that Jake Garcia won.
Yeah, and of course, you guys are out there for every bit of it. And I've been out there recently quite a bit too. We had the kickoff luncheon Monday, and Mike Houston said that he reached the same conclusion separately that John David Baker did. So they didn't collaborate on what their final thought was going to be. And it didn't sound like there was a huge separation. Obviously, I think they have high expectations that Caton's going to contribute and be a part of what they're doing this year too. So it's good to have options, as we know. You want to have depth at every position. Quarterback's the most important position. So it's nice to have some options, and we'll see how both of them do probably at some point this year. But I think with Jake too, he brings some mobility, certainly brings some swagger. Didn't play at Missouri, but at Miami, he had some playing time down there. So he's a veteran from that standpoint. And then when Caden Hauser sees the field, you got a guy that started 7 games last year at Michigan State. So I think there's a lot of optimism about that role. And you guys chop it up every single day out there. I mean, that it wasn't just one position, but that was the biggest problem last year. And they've gone to really address that in a big way, I thought.
Yeah, another one was receivers, but it's a whole operation, as you know, Jim, from the O-line to the quarterback to the receivers, and just nothing really worked last year. Trying to fix that this offseason and coming up when they take on Norfolk State next Saturday. Jim, what do you think about your first trip through the American? And as bad as East Carolina's record was, they were in a bunch of those games. If they could have got anything going offensively in the third, fourth quarter of some of those games, they would have had more wins. So it feels like they're close. If you look at it, UTSA, Tulane, and certainly Memphis seem to be the popular picks this year. But again, just your thoughts on your first trip around the league and your take on the American this year.
Yeah, and the nice thing is we don't, as you know, have to face 3 of the top 4 teams as
Yeah.
far as the predictions go. And predictions can be off, but just going into it, looks like those are some of the teams again this year. But I think for the American, I think you're right. I mean, if we had just an ordinary amount of offense, they would have won a lot more games. I mean, shoulda, coulda with Charlotte, certainly could have beat Tulsa at the end. Navy, if they had any points at all, that was basically a 3-0 game in the fourth quarter. So I mean, just saying those three, you're at 5 wins right there already. So to me, I feel like they were very close in those games, and that's the difference of what this year should be versus last year and what it was. Is that they will be able to have some offense this year and be able to compete in that conference. And I know they were picked right towards the middle of the pack somewhat as far as, again, whatever it's worth for preseason. But I think, again, the margins are narrow, and they could get on a roll, get into conference play. They play, I think to me, really challenging out of conference schedule that'll set them up well for what they do in conference play. So they should hit the ground running once they get in there. But competitive, but to me, I think ECU is a team that should be in the top half of it this year, and it could have been at least middle of the pack last year.
Yeah, obviously there are some fans that want to see a bigger name on the schedule, but for what ECU has now and for the new rules and the new playoff format, this schedule sets up pretty good. You're playing almost playoff games in September against Liberty, against Appalachian State, against UTSA, who is in your league. And all those teams, by the way, Jim, are receiving votes in the preseason top 25, which doesn't mean much, but like you said, it's a challenging schedule, and just the excitement factor now that one of the Liberties or App States or ECUs of the world is going to be in the playoff. So everybody right now is thinking, why not us? You'll get a chance to go out and prove it on the field.
Yeah, that group of five is a whole different thing now with the expanded playoffs. So I think Liberty and App State certainly feel coming into the season that they're going to challenge for postseason like that. And look at last year, that game East Carolina had against App State in the third quarter, and with the lead there, it became a shootout. But now they maybe have the weapons to match a team when those games happen. And you guys are kind of used to that. It was kind of the opposite last year of it being low scoring games. There's a history of there being some real shootouts, and I think this year the weapons will be there for the Pirates to be able to get to that level and be able to put some points on the board when needed in a game that gets high scoring like that. But I think that stretch of a couple of games there and going on the road to Old Dominion. I mean, there's a lot of really challenging games that'll set them up well for conference play.
Jim Szoke joining us. Talked to your home broadcast running mate Kevin Monroe last week. Planning to talk to Andrew Bays soon. Is Andrew back on the call again this year?
He is. It's been very similar to last year with Kevin on the home games and Andrew for the road games. So I think those are set. And we'll have Macy O'Donnell on the sideline again this year.
Fantastic. So good Pirate flavor there with Jim Szoke on the call. Jim, we got you here. We'll talk a little Panthers. For my Panthers buddies out there, will they get to see Bryce Young this preseason?
That's been the thing that's coming down to the wire as far as decision making goes. And as long as they have, I think the group around him, if they can go out in groups and go out, they'll play a series or two in this last game against Buffalo on the road. I think what they don't want to do is a patchwork of starters and non-starters. So I think that's the goal. So as long as they get a good, favorable, healthy report out of what came out of practice today, I think there's been a leaning in that direction, that's the direction they want to go, is to get them with a new coach in Dave Canales, just going through all that stuff. That is it be gained a lot as far as a series or two of football. Probably not so much as just going through the whole process of a new coach, hearing everybody through the headsets, all that kind of thing that you take for granted. You don't want to be tripping over yourself in the first game and feeling out of sorts. So I think that's the goal, and hopefully they're healthy enough to do that.
Jim Szoke joining us. Jim, kind of sounds like you think it's a work in progress right now. First-year head coach, second-year quarterback. Still a little bit of a ways to go for Carolina. We've talked about how ECU could improve this year with some new additions, new offense, things like that. What can you tell the Panthers fans to say, hey, they'll be better at this coming up in 2024? What kind of improvements do you think we'll see from Carolina?
Well, I think for the Panthers, it's very similar to ECU. When you've got good defense, that'll keep you in a lot of games.
Yeah.
You keep the score tight, and I think this defense again, and Ejiro Rivera is one of the great defensive coordinators in this league. They just need to get more takeaways. I mean, they have to kind of do a little bit more than expected. Last year it wasn't takeaways and sacks, but they kept the yardage down. I think this year they're going to have to get more sacks and more takeaways, and they know that. And then offensively, I think they addressed the biggest issue, which was the offensive line, especially the interior. So when they brought in Damian Lewis and in particular Robert Hunt, Austin Corbett at center, that core in the middle of the offensive line will not only help the team overall, but also help the two tackles with Ike Ekwonu, the former NC State tackle, of course, and Taylor Moton. With that line last year, they couldn't really function offensively. So went out and got, obviously, Xavier Legette from South Carolina, their first-round pick. Deontay Johnson from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think the weapons will be better, but it all begins with that offensive line setting up success for the rest of the offense.
Jim, I always admired the Gene Deckerhoffs of the world, the West Durham, Dan Horde, our buddy from Cincinnati, and now yourself. How did you handle the travel, the wear and tear from last year, and are you prepared to go through that again this year?
Yeah, there's going to be some interesting ones again this year, but I do plan on doing all 12 Pirate games like I did last year. And it's, because of the distance, it's 4 hours, as anyone knows, driving between Charlotte and Greenville, essentially. It's kind of that in between of, could you fly in or fly out? And it's
Right.
just as far as that goes. There were some games I caught them on the road. The easiest one, of course, is a road game in Charlotte, so that helps me. That's one out of 12 that'll be really easy to get to. But the most challenging stretch will come in November. We have the two Thursday games, of course, with the Pirates. And in between the two Thursday games is the Panthers game in Munich.
Oh,
so it'll be Greenville, Munich, and then Tulsa, all within an 8-day period there. So that'll be challenging, but it'll get done. The nice thing about that is once I get through it, I'll enjoy it. But the physical standpoint is once I get through that second Thursday game, there's no games that weekend because both of my teams will have played at that point. So I could just collapse for like 3 days.
Go into hibernation for a while. Jim Szoke joining us today on Pirate Radio Live. Jim, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We'll try to catch up with you again later on this season. But have a great call, both here in Greenville and Charlotte as well. And we appreciate you joining us today, man.
Anytime. Thank you, Clip.